Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shaken Not Burned, a cocktail of solutions for a sustainable future. I am your host, Giulia Bottaro, and this week I have spoken to Helen Clements, Director Innovation and Behavior Change Lead at GoUnpackaged, a UK-based consultancy that helps retailers switch to refill systems. So, unsurprisingly, this week's episode is about refills and specifically how supermarkets can make that change. When we talk about the circular economy, there are the three R's, so reduce, reuse, and recycle. But it seems that most of the focus tends to be on recycling rather than anything else. However, we really cannot recycle our way out of this mess. Recycling does have a lot of environmental impact. So, for example, when plastic specifically goes through the process, it does release harmful toxins into the environment. And that's just one example. So the idea is that to really reduce our impact as much as possible, we will need to prevent the waste from entering the system. So keeping the products circulating. Obviously, it's quite a challenge. It requires both the retailers but also the consumers to make significant change in their habits. Helen and I have had quite a wide-ranging conversation going from the details of how their system works to how retailers are addressing this in the UK and obviously the benefits and the opportunities that come from a reuse system. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Morning. Lovely to meet you, Julia.
So can you tell me a bit about yourself, what the company does and your role in it?
Yes, so I've worked in innovation for over 20 years. So about 5 years ago, I helped set up GoUnpackaged with a couple of other co-directors. And my role is obviously focused on the innovation elements that are required to move people to a more circular economy. So we talk about imagining and delivering the future of reuse as what we do. And that's all about the kind of systems thinking, systems innovation. How do we move systems, large scale systems that have all been optimized over, tens, if not 100 years to get products into people's hands into a more circular version of life in order to remove single-use packaging wherever possible. And my role is looking at both the innovation, so reinventing the supply chain, how it works, and also behavior change, which is looking at demand. How can we make sure that we enable the end consumer to be able to use it, to want to use it, and to use it in the volumes that make these systems economic?
Exciting. We do love systems change at Shake Not Burn, so that's great to hear. Perhaps before we dive deeper into the work of GoUnpackaged, can you explain for our listeners that may not be super familiar with the concept what really is the circular economy and also if everyone can take part in it?
Yes, so the circular economy basically removes single-use packaging, particularly single-use plastic, but in fact all single-use packaging comes at an extreme sort of cost to our planet, and makes it so that from end to end, what something gets put into, so say it's something simple like a cornflake cereal, well, as soon as that's produced, it is placed into a reusable container that then moves through the supply chain, through retail. The consumer can purchase it and have it at home, eat the goods from it, and return that piece of packaging for it to be washed and refilled and used again. And that is a circular economy, as you can imagine. It's instead of the sort of linear economy that we're used to, where goods are packaged up, you go and buy them from a store, and then any packaging ends up in the waste stream, as that's the end of its useful life. We now grab that packaging and it comes back and is able to be used again. And so no extra waste, or very, very little extra waste, ends up into landfill or incineration.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone can confirm that we all dispose of an insane amount of plastic or paper in the kitchen, mountains and mountains of waste that I keep, I keep being surprised at. Also, just to point out for the listeners, we are now talking about circular economy when it comes to packaging. So obviously, the circular economy applies to every aspect of the
Exactly.
economy. But
Exactly.
today we're focusing on packaging specifically. Perfect. So yeah, so when, at GoUnpackaged, exactly what is the purpose of the company and what type of companies do you work with?
So we like to think of ourselves as change agents. We are a consultancy, but our aim is to help as many businesses and organisations as possible move to a more zero waste and circular set of rules for how they produce and move and enable people to consume goods. So, as I said, reimagining and delivering the future of reuse. Now, the thing that makes us slightly different is that we have used our skills because we have a lot of skills in this area. I'm an innovation specialist. One of my co-directors is a logistics and circular movement specialist. He's worked in that field for over 20 years. And the third director is a policy specialist who's worked in zero waste again for 20 years. So we have a sort of a unique set of skills that allows us to help organizations move. And we've run big projects that actually have full scale circular supply chain aspects to them. So it's not just theory. Importantly, this is about the practice and what you learn in doing it and applying those learnings to new challenges.
Can you provide an example of a large scale project?
So the biggest one we're known for at the moment is the Refill Coalition. It's a coalition of retailers in the UK. We're doing both refill in store with Aldi, and we're also doing a sort of returnable system with Ocado. So I have one of our lovely Ocado packs here.
Lovely.
Now, you may want, you can grab some photos off the web. The Ocado trial, both trials are going very, very well. The interesting thing about this Ocado trial is that quite often I get out this piece of packaging and people go, oh, and they're a little disappointed in the aesthetics. But however,
we'll send we'll add the link somewhere so people can see what we are talking about. But aesthetics is not important, right? If it's a household product.
Aesthetics is it. People, we are all emotional beings, and aesthetics do matter to everybody. The important thing, though, is that maybe our aesthetic choice is deliberate, which in this case it is. So one of the problems is if you make a reusable piece of packaging too beautiful, people like them and they keep them and they may find other uses for them, at which point your more heavy grade reusable item has been lost from the circular economy in which it was designed for. And you have to remember things like this, like we've designed this to run for at least 60 cycles. So we need them back. So we've designed it deliberately to be, as we call it, charmingly ugly. And the point is that if you are somebody with pantry goals and you want, your kitchen to look beautiful, this is not your first choice of item, but you may still want the benefits of a circular system. So you just decant it into your more beautiful permanent piece that you've got in your pantry, whether that's a lovely kiln, a jar, or whatever. And so the important thing is to think about what is important to our system. And what's really important to a circular system is keeping the assets alive, moving, circulating, because otherwise you have to buy many more assets because you get blockages in the system. And then the economies of scale from a circular system can be put at risk. But yes, there are, I'm sure people can find out, but there are all sorts of examples of very beautiful bits of packaging designed for circular systems that have never ever returned.
And that's a very scary prospect. And you mentioned there that this product is heavy grade. So can you explain what that means? Is it just more durable plastic, or
Yeah.
what's the
So
thinking
durability
behind
is
it?
really important. So obviously, and you need to think about what happens systemically in our societies with waste as well. So these are made of HDPE. They will be HDPER, and so it's a form of plastic. We're not anti-plastic, but we're very much anti-single-use plastic. The reason it's plastic is because to move through a supply chain, you're palletizing things, you're putting them on roll cages, they're running through production lines. They are getting bashed. They are being, they're on lorries. They're up against things. If you make it from something like glass, you will get breakage, and breakage in and around food is very, very problematic. And also, the handling of glass, you need to be much more careful. The same with handling stainless steel and aluminium. They get dinks. Some people don't like dinks in their reusable packaging and don't like it. So you have to think about what it is you're going to use, and that's why we've chosen HDPE. Then you need to think about how well it will wash. So we have to go through, well, what are all the possible, we're in food, we're dealing with allergens, we're dealing with quite stringent, bacterial criteria, all sorts of things. So all of that needs to be factored into what are you using. And then if you think about our future, at the moment, waste is picked up curbside here in the UK and in lots of countries and is crushed immediately on picking up at curbside. That's how it's managed. Now, we can't reusables, that would be very, very problematic for. So we need a non-crush system for curbside collection, and we need to think about how that's going to work. And again, these are light but durable, slightly heavier weight than a milk container would be, a standard milk container would be, but blow molded and designed in a way to make sure that it can sustain itself through the rigors of what we're going to be putting it through.
So when you were talking about crushing the waste, that's the way it's collected, are you saying that we need to rethink waste collection in
Yes,
order to avoid crushing the reusable items?
we'll need to, absolutely. And that's part of our other work, is working with people, in the waste collection industry, because the current system is based on crush. The current DRS system as being launched is based on crush.
What's
So
the DRS? Sorry?
deposit return scheme systems that are
Okay.
gradually being introduced here. There are other deposit return schemes that don't crush across Europe, but the one that we're introducing here is going to be based on crushing, which means that yes, the glass gets recycled, but the heat one has to get to create new glass from
Yeah.
existing glass is a huge heat. So we have to think about what it takes to be reusing materials as well.
Yeah. So these deposit return schemes, um, so how does it work? I bring something back and I get some money back,
Yeah, you'll
or
get your deposit back. I mean, it
okay.
was your money in the first place. Let's be
Oh,
clear.
okay.
A deposit
Yeah.
return scheme, like
I'm just not very familiar with the concept.
no, I mean, I think there's a equitability question around deposit return schemes. I think we need to
Hmm.
think very hard about how it works across all society. But the theory is you pay to be given the opportunity to use some form of reusable. You pay a deposit on it, and if you bring it back, you get that money back. Now, there are, in some of the coffee cup schemes across the UK, they're trialing new ways of doing it, which is you don't pay a deposit for your coffee cup. If you haven't returned it in a certain period of time, you will be charged a small fine. I think that's more equitable. I think that is, you did something wrong, you're now paying the price for it. I think funding the deposit up front makes people less likely to want to participate in these kinds of schemes.
So if with the coffee cup, if someone gets charged because they didn't return it in a certain amount of time, then if someone feels like they're forgetful, or they don't want to have this burden of, the commitment of returning it, then they could just go to another coffee shop that doesn't have the coffee cup
Yes,
or
exactly. But
return scheme,
normally
right?
these are sort of in some way app powered, so it will then charge you.
Hmm.
The trick is it finds a way to charge you. But yes, it's we use, if you think about how someone like IKEA has trained its customer base to operate in a certain way. From the moment you enter an IKEA store, the customers are being trained how to pick things up, what to put them in, how to carry them
Hmm.
around the store, the direction around the store they should travel, with a few shortcuts if you're clever. The fact that then there's a deal, which is you pick it up, and because there are less colleagues to pick it out for you or pick it up for you, that's why you're getting it at a cheaper price. There is a very, very explicit deal. So that has trained, and when any of us go to IKEA, we know the rules and we operate within their rules. So that shows you how a mass market brand can train its customers to operate in a certain way. We need to do the same in reusables. We need to train everybody how, what is the appropriate behavior? How are you going to do it? What happens if you don't play by the rules? What happens if you do? And that's what behavior change is all about. And it's not just about fining people for bad behavior. It's about the nudges that make you do it in the way you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose there is a lot of training to be done in this case because we're using, asking consumers to switch to reusable packaging means that they need to change the way that they manage their home completely. Um, right. And are there any questions about hygiene maybe sometimes in the shops? So if there is, I'm just thinking. So actually, as a caveat, I cannot wait for big supermarkets to have reusable, to have refills because I once went to a refill shop and it was so expensive,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I know that it's a matter of scale. So if the large supermarkets had the refills, then it would be cheaper simply because of
Absolutely. And
the numbers.
that's exactly what we have with Aldi. You get your cereal. We've got 2 stores up and running in Birmingham, in Solihull and Leamington Spa. There's a refill in store there of cereals, and those cereals are slightly cheaper than the exact same cereals that are available across the aisle. And we've been running those trials since late last year, early this year, and they both are at 30% share of those goods. So we know that consumers want it, that a 30% share is massive. Consumers happy with it. And absolutely, the 3 things that we absolutely have to make sure is that it is hygienic, that it is easy, and that it is quick. And that is true for in-store refill, and current in-store refill, not our system, is not those things, but our system is. And the Ocado trial, where it comes in home, equally, how do we evidence to people hygiene? How do we make sure it's as easy and as quick for them as any other packaged good? Because the trick is consumers aren't going to change a lot. We're just asking them to change a little bit
Yeah.
and make it as quick and easy for them as possible. So yes, so hygiene's a massive thing. Our units are filled at source, sealed, and then they only get opened when they go on the fixture. And they have, it's like a one-way valve on the dispensing head.
Right.
So hygiene is absolutely primary. The washing standards that we use for all of our vessels, whether it's the in-store, big in-store ones, or the ones going to Ocado, huge washing protocol has been built. And absolutely it is, hygiene is our number one priority, including allergens, because allergens is an enormous risk for everybody. So, and we have constant testing as the wash process goes through, and constant testing to make sure everything is perfectly clean. So all of those things have to be true. We can't expect people to change their behaviour and have a worse experience. Like, no, because they
Yeah,
won't.
especially for sustainability.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are not convinced about the benefits and they like the life as it is. So we need to convince everyone. So thinking about the Aldi trial scheme, I go into the shop and there are these like these columns with valves and I can get my cereal. Am I supposed to take my own box from home or are there any boxes there that can be used? And what happens if I got already a box and I forget it? Can I get a new one? Does it cost more? How does that work?
So we have a principle on all our work is do not let the customer fail, okay? Because this is new. People may be doing it for the first time. And if they fail, they will be far less likely to try again. Okay, so because this is new behaviour, because we are changing the way people shop, never let people fail. So the first thing is you have the big fixture, and yes, you can buy some nice cereal tubs that Aldi merchandise at the bottom of it. So if you don't have a nice container at home, you can buy one from Aldi. I think they're like $1.99. They're not at all expensive. There is also paper bags in the unit. So if you have turned up and you don't want to buy one of theirs because you've left your container at home, you can fill into a paper bag and take it home that way. And you can bring your own container in. And currently our scale is set up that any of those three options you can choose, and it will take you through the fastest journey to completion with any of those options. So if you have an Aldi container, we have that weight pre-teared off on the machine. So you don't have to tear off. You just say, I've got an Aldi container. If you take a paper bag, we have that weight teared off on the machine. So there are things we can do to make it really slick and really quick. We do want to try and nudge people away from using paper bags. We would rather they used a reusable. Of course we would. Now, when we're in more than a couple of stores, we'll be able to get print work basically for those paper bags, because ideally what you want is a message on those paper bags saying, you know, I've got a carbon load too. Next time, remember to bring your own container. So there are things we can do to remind people and nudge people. Things that we haven't necessarily been able to put into play yet because we're at too small a scale, but things that we definitely know that we want to do in future. And so we give them the options. We don't say, you know, bring your own container or we're not here to serve you. I think that is a terrible, terrible mistake when you are trying to encourage consumers to change the way they shop something.
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, if someone bought two containers, so when one is half empty, they know that they can bring to the shop the second one. You know, people can come with all sorts of ingenious management
Absolutely. There is no
tools.
reason. And also I mean, I'm not a big fan of the cotton bags, if I'm really honest. I don't like them. But there are other sorts of bags and resealable bags that you can put through the washing machine. So there are all sorts of strategies you can have. So you're not carrying containers, but equally you're using some kind of transit reusable. So there's all sorts of ways we can do it. And the same with liquids. But the trick is to kind of think through each step of the journey, both in the supply chain and also for the consumer, all the way to home, and to the point at which they have some, you know, is there any waste for them to get rid of? Or have you reached a point where you should get them to notice that there is no waste? Because again, that's, you know, a lot of people find that really exciting when they feel like they're not putting stuff into recycling anymore.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's a quite common conversation to have. It's the amount of waste we produce all the time, so it's nice not to do that. Um, so are there any plans to expand this trial with Aldi to other products and maybe make it a permanent thing as well?
Well, definitely looking to go into other products. We would like to be in many more stores, and we would like other retailers to join and do it. there's a bit of reticence. Retailers are waiting, I would describe it as, for the solution to be perfected. And for there to be enough, reason for them to do it. One would have thought there was enough reason for them to do it, but apparently, until they get regulated, there isn't. So it's very frustrating for us and for Aldi because we have a really great solution. And as I said, it's 30% share. So it's like it's performing really well. It's performing, 96% of consumers think it's hygienic or very hygienic. 89% think it's fast to use and convenient to use. So we are in high, on our testing, on our nationally representative numbers, we're in very high positive numbers, but we just need more retailers to do it. So that would be great. The Ocado trial is going really, really well as well. And so again, it would be interesting to see more retailers join and do that now that we've got a kind of an online solution. So yeah, I am always slightly horrified at how long it takes organisations to decide to do the right thing, even when the answer's just sitting right in front of them. And yes, is it perfect? No, because we haven't gone, to full scale yet. But the only way we can go to full scale is by more people joining in and helping us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had Waitrose as a member of the Refill Coalition,
Yeah.
right? And then they left last year. What was the reasoning behind it?
So there's a few things. So we worked initially with them on their original Unpacked offering, which is like a zero waste store, but in a store. So you have to have a clean room out back. You're using the old bulk system. We have been advocating for them to switch over to the new system for a very long time. For all sorts of reasons. There's been all sorts of reorganisations and things going on within the John Lewis Partnership and Waitrose. And so they've decided not to do it. I think it's a mistake. I wish they were still working with us. I wish they were still doing it. It's a real shame because a lot of customers in the 4 stores in which they were making, this type of shopping available now have nothing. And they could have a much, much more scalable, economical, food safe way of doing this if they'd only switched over to our system.
So can you clarify the differences between this old system and your system?
So the old system is a big bulk container, and it has the dispenser and the whole bulk container all one thing. And in a zero waste shop, you clean that and dry it manually, and then you fill it with goods, probably from a 5 or a 10 kilo sack. So this is not a zero waste system. It's coming in larger packs, but it's still coming in packs, and then you have packs to get rid of. And you fill it up, and as you empty the goods into this big bulk container, you are oxidizing the entire product. Okay, because you are emptying it, and it's passing through air into the thing. You put the lid on it, you hang it on a shelf, consumer comes in. That's a traditional zero waste store. To do that, you have to have this clean room out the back for these things to be washed and dried and filled if you are to be a food safe environment. Our system does none of that. We are filled at source. I can show you. This is the very large. It's filled at source. So as the food is being manufactured, shut, sealed, tamper-proof seals, and then it travels through the supply chain in these, which means you could warehouse if you wanted to, which matters to different sorts of manufacturers. And it will stay good in this until this is opened and the seal broken. These are optimized for pallets, Euro pallets, and roll cages, because it's all about how do you move stuff around to maximize those loads so that the least amount of fuel is used when you're moving things about. These arrive back of store and it gets very quickly changed over, and then it sits on a dispensing head with a false front, and that sits in store. And at that point, you have opened it, but now your shelf life only starts at that point, not from when you've tipped it all out. To switch one of those over takes a colleague about 30 to 40 seconds maximum. It's even quicker than unloading a carton onto a shelf. So actually, we're saving time for the retailer on lots of goods. Not everything, but on lots and lots of goods. And then when it's empty, the switchover is 30 to 40 seconds. These empties go back to the back of the store into an empty bulk container, and then they just get collected and taken off for washing. And off they go again. So the only thing that happens in store is this kind of grabbing from the back room, 30-second changeover, putting it on. None of this washing, emptying. Actually, there's some packaging that needs to be disposed of. All of that has disappeared from the system. So it's a fundamentally different system with fundamentally lower costs for the retailer.
And did you design the system at
Yes.
GoUnpackaged?
Yeah, because we recognised in our work with various retailers that the systems they were using, in order to test whether there was consumer appetite, to be fair, were not scalable systems. You can't add that much. You can't building a cleaning room, apart from the fact that most people shop in convenience stores, so there is no back of house. You building a clean room to every store. I mean, it's an enormous cost. And also losing the shelf life and all of this kind of stuff, like all of that stuff, you need to remove all of that. You need this to be from, one touch from the moment it's produced. That good then is not touched again until the consumer dispenses it. In essence, that's the only time it's, those goods are now open to the air again.
And what's the capacity of these containers?
The big ones for the in-store refill are about 14 litres. The small Ocado ones, they are just under 3 litres. They're also optimised for the systems in which they work. So Ocado have the smallest consumer tote of all the totes in the marketplace. So this fits very neatly into theirs, but that means it also fits into everyone else's. So Ocado, as did Aldi, joined the trial in order to help create the standards that would mean everybody else could join.
Okay, so just for our listeners, these are big, this 14-liter container reminds me of the bottle where you buy your washing liquid, and then it's got this big cap at the top, and then just turn it and that will dispense.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's very clever.
Well, like I said, the thing is I think the benefit of us as change agents is we've kind of been through it at least twice and in numerous ways. We really know what we're designing for to make these systems work. And I think quite often people think it's just about the piece of packaging in the consumer's hand, and that really isn't the case. There is so much more to it than that.
So what do you need to scale this from companies, from retailers, but also at the policy level?
Retailers need to get involved. They know that they've got various, EPR and other taxes coming down the line at them. But they're just, like I said, they're just they'd like someone else to solve it for them so they don't have to think about it. Now, I'm sorry, but if not now, when? And if not you guys, who? It is up to retailers and brands to get busy on this. Yes, developing these systems at the outset is a cost, but if they do it together, and that's what we advocate, collaboration, then they all do it at a reduced cost. We're reducing the risk. We're going to get to scale quicker because everybody's in it together, and we're going to be able to move faster. So the first thing is just get on with it. We have solutions now, get on with it. There is, a requirement for more regulation. At the moment, people do a little bit of a dance, which is they there are ways to kind of focus on, we'll have more recyclable efforts, or they can chop and change interchangeably. But I think, as we've all seen, and as we all know, but when there was a recent report this week, recycling still isn't at the state it needs to be for it to be something we can rely on. It is, we are not recycling enough plastic, and we won't be able to for some time. So unless we just want to live in an ever greater waste dump, and the problems it is giving us, we need to start addressing this immediately. So I think regulation is going to come down the line. However, there are very strong lobbying groups that work against us. I think that was also kind of revealed this week. But, you've got to hope that governments who are brave and bold will just continue to apply regulation.
Yeah, I think there is too much of a focus on recycling where we should prevent waste from being created in the first place. And I think in the UK, a lot of thinking about packaging, a lot of it is not recyclable, or you can recycle it at the supermarket, which realistically we can't expect everyone to remember to take that waste there and so on. And recycling isn't even environmentally friendly because it does release chemicals.
There's been new reports this week that most of that soft plastic recycling is going to incineration. It's not being recycled at all.
Great. Even better. So yeah, definitely we need to prevent this. One thing is that I was wondering is what is the low hanging fruit for a company when they want to start the reuse journey? Is it this big feat, or are there any quick wins that they can start with?
There absolutely are. I mean, I think first of all, actually, if you open your eyes to it, actually, there's more out there than you might have thought of. So, I mean, obviously, people can try their local zero waste shops. They may not want to do some elements of it, but choose to do others. The truth is, if every household refilled just one item per week in the UK, that would be 1.4 billion items taken out of the waste stream. So never think that just doing only one thing is pointless or too small. Doing one thing, actually, if every household did one thing, we would see a lot of change. So first of all, doing something is important, whether you're refilling your washing up liquid or buying your oats in a different way. Either of those things, go for it, and there are many other things. So there's stuff like that. Write and demand your major retailer to change. They do listen. The more we badger them with why aren't you doing refill in store, the more likely we are to see it. There are also other things. I mean, everyone acts like this is a whole new thing or a really traditional old-fashioned thing. I'm kind of the opinion that useful systems and methodologies live on in the world, and we should be very aware to look for all sorts. But, the Dabawallahs in India have been doing a reverse logistics, amazing reuse system for many, many years, and it's much more highly complex than what we're asking to do here. So you might find that I've got an equivalent to that called Dabba Drop here near me, where basically it's reusable. Is a reusable Dabba style tin that people can get their Indian takeaways in and then return it. But there are all sorts of these kind of reusability schemes around you. Could be in food service, could be in coffee clubs, could be in things on your high street. And it's just worth if you open your eyes, you'll find them. They are around you. They're small. In some instances, they're more expensive, but in other instances, they're not. So just see what you can find and then advocate for it. Write, and bug people until they start putting it in to all our shops. Accessibility is the biggest problem. People want to try these things. They have no access to them.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ellen, and thank you for the actionable actions.
Yep.
Thanks for the actionable points that our listeners can take. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think, I've talked a lot about stuff that's in and around supermarket retail and shopping and food, but it does apply to all sorts of other areas as well. And it's worth thinking about all the ways in which the circular economy can work. But, the supply chains and how those work, all supply chains can become circular, is the interesting thing. And we are working with some other clients on things like that. But it's don't think this is just about how we get food into retail or how we serve coffee in coffee cups. It's much more than that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We will leave links in the show notes for Helen's contacts and GoUnpackaged, the Refill Coalition, and also to the reports that you mentioned.
Brilliant.
And to our listeners, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media. See you next week.